I just saw the most brilliant post about how trauma is different for men than it is for women, and how trauma research is mostly built on men and men's bodies. And this just really landed for me as a licensed healthcare practitioner specialized in female health and hormones. I say all the time that women aren't just small men, right? We have different hormones, we have different hormonal needs. That's why a lot of things that you hear in the science or in like the weight loss and fitness world, they have been studied on men's bodies, not women. Not saying the science is wrong, just saying that we need to kind of remix it and think about, okay, how do we take this science that is based off of men and men's physiology and all tailored to, their hormone testosterone, and reapply it to women so that it actually like works and makes sense for us, right? That's a huge part of my work in the sense of health, wellness, weight loss, fitness, right? So I know that a huge part of healing and even weight loss has to do with the inner work, right? It has to do with trauma. It has to do with, old stories holding us back, things that hold on to our body like weight. It's basically like those old stories and trauma. They can become a heavy weight in the body. Literally, your body will hold on to those things as weight. So when I saw this post, which I want to share with you and kind of talk through, I thought this was absolutely brilliant. So this comes from Ailey Jolie out of the UK, and she says, the trauma research was built on men. The healing protocols and tools were tested on men. Then they were handed to women without asking if our disconnection or disembodiment looked the same. It doesn't. I was like, oh my God. So Van der Kolk, which is the author of The Body Keeps the Score, which I have a copy. This is a great book. We're not saying that this book is not amazing, but this is written by a man for men, right? So he began his career studying combat veterans returning from Vietnam. Men, right? Levine developed somatic experiencing by watching animals escape predators. Porges built the polyvagal theory from mammalian biology. Their work expanded over decades, and it's brilliant work, important work, but the foundational frameworks, the metaphors, and the assumption emerged from bodies in acute crisis. Men at war, animals fleeing predators, mammals under threat. So now she goes in to say what she thinks is missing when it comes to women. They miss that women's disembodiment often has no origin story, no single event. It's often the slow accumulation of learning that your body belonged to others before it belonged to you. Let me just take a moment, because I feel like that will probably resonate with every woman listening to this. Were you not taught that your body and autonomy over your body belonged to someone else before it belonged to you? Does it even belong to you now? Whew. The research assumed a before, and some of us were shaped from the beginning. They missed that we were never allowed to learn the fight or flight responses, right? People get really threatened when a woman gets aggressive, right? Don't be aggressive, be nice, be a good girl, smile. Girls who fight back get labeled as difficult or worse. Girls who flee get called dramatic. So the nervous system learned a different way. Please, appease, disappear into accommodation. Put everyone else's needs first. Think about them before you think about yourself. Fight, flight, freeze came from watching animals. Fawn came from watching women. So we always hear fight or flight. Then we even hear freeze, right? That's animalistic behavior that still applies to us. But fawn came from watching what women do, because that comes more naturally to us. That feels more safe to us than to actually fight, right? Think about it. They miss that you can't discharge or release what was never a single event. Shaking, tremoring, the different tools that you use to release, trauma from the body. These are great tools as well. But completing the interrupted fight or flight sequence, these tools assume a charge that built up and needs release. A tiger you couldn't escape, an accident you couldn't process. But how do you shake off 20 years of sucking in your stomach? I love her. This woman is brilliant. How do you tremor out a lifetime of making yourself easy to be around? Making yourself non-threatening. A lifetime of that. They miss the impact on the nervous system of being constantly assessed. Right? We as women, we are being constantly assessed. We're doing it to ourselves, but society, we are constantly assessed. Research now shows self-objectification impairs interoception. The ability to sense your own body from the inside. Women learn to monitor their reflection, and they lose accuracy of detecting their own heartbeat, their own hunger, their own fatigue. We are so taught to monitor ourselves from the outside. What do I look like? How am I acting? How am I being perceived by the world? That we have trouble hearing what's coming from the inside. Am I hungry? Am I fatigued? Am I okay? Is my heart beating steadily right now, or is it too fast? We are more likely to perceive what we think the world sees of us rather than feel what we naturally feel on the inside. And this just hit me so hard. This isn't trauma with a capital T. It's ordinary girlhood. It's ordinary womanhood. They missed emotional labor as chronic activation, the constant low-level scanning, anticipating needs, managing moods, smoothing tension before they surface. This isn't hypervigilance in response to a single threat. It's hypervigilance as a way of life. That just struck me so hard because I have long since been hypervigilant to everyone else's needs around me, more than I even am to my own. And that's been something that I've been working on. And I think that's the case for a lot of women. The research saw dysregulation. It didn't see the impossible demands creating it. They missed how women's capacity for connection becomes the very thing used against us. We have been trained to be so focused on co-regulation that we abandon our own emotions and body signals to keep the peace. We learn to feel for everyone else but ourselves. Then what kept us safe becomes our own pathology. The same behavior that gets called selfless at home gets diagnosed as codependent in therapy. They missed that women's bodies are cyclical. Like, round of applause, because this is what I'm saying all the time. We as women are cyclical beings, right? Men are steady Eddie, women are cyclical beings. That's just how our hormones work, that's how our biology works, and clearly that's how our nervous systems are wired as well. The research treated the nervous system as static, a baseline you deviate from and return to, but women's bodies shift hourly, weekly, monthly, across decades, especially monthly. Hormones rise and fall, especially monthly. Capacity changes. What feels manageable on day 10 feels impossible on day 24. Absolutely, because what you can handle during ovulation is not the same that you can handle the week just before your period. Every woman knows this if you pay attention. Dysregulation isn't always dysregulation. Sometimes it's a body moving through its own rhythm. They missed what gets passed down. Trauma doesn't just live in your body. It lived in your mother's body, in your grandmother's. Oh my God, I think every woman, if you think about this, I can definitely say, yes, I know that my cousins and I have talked about this, my female cousins. What was the trauma that was in my mother's family that got passed down to us? Not as a way of blaming and shaming, as a way of recognizing and healing. The women who came before you and never had words for what they carried because they weren't allowed to express themselves or acknowledge their emotions in their generations. So they got silenced and it got passed on. The nervous system patterns you inherited aren't just yours, they're echoes. Survival strategies passed down through generations of women who did what they had to do to endure. You're not just healing your own story, you're holding theirs too. And that's why sometimes it's really heavy. That's why sometimes you might just be exhausted and you don't know why. Because you're not just holding your own things, you're holding generations of women who did not have the words, the capacity, or the safe space to heal or express themselves. They miss that the beauty industry is a nervous system assault. The beauty industry is a nervous system assault. Like, think about it. Constant assessment, endless correction, chasing of a perfection that we'll never achieve, right? And they make a lot of money off of that. The message that your body as it is a problem to solve. This isn't vanity, it's chronic activation. A nervous system that never rests because it's always being evaluated. Are you performing well enough? Are you looking good enough? Do we approve? Did you earn the approval? They miss that the beauty and wellness industries are the same system. One keeps women assessing their bodies while the other sells them a solution. But neither invites women to be in their bodies just as they are. Because neither system does, these women's nervous systems never rest. It's first evaluated, then optimized constantly. This is why the body keeps the score doesn't fit for women. Score implies tally marks, countable events. Women's bodies don't keep the score, they keep the story. This is huge. This is so huge. Like in my program, Feminine Health Mastery, literally the whole first month is on inner work. And one of those modules is about the old stories that we've been telling ourselves that have been holding us back. I think this is so huge because we all have stories like that. The story of being shaped by forces that started before memory, of learning to hold a form that prioritized everyone else's comfort over yours, of abandoning yourself so slowly that you didn't notice it happening because you've been doing it your whole life and your mother did it before you and your grandmother probably did it before her. The difference between score and story. So score asks, what broke you? Story asks, what were you shaped to hold? How were you molded? Whose needs were you molded around? Score implies damage to repair. Story implies a narrative to understand, right? A coping mechanism, how you survived. Score treats symptoms as malfunction. Story treats symptoms as testimony. And then she goes on to say that she's not discrediting their research work or legacy. She's naming what got missed. Van der Kolk, Levine, Porges, all of these, brilliant groundbreakers in this field, their work changed the field. But frameworks built on combat veterans and fleeing animals were never going to fully capture what happens to a girl who learns that how her body looks is more important than how it feels to live inside her own body. Your body keeps the story. And a woman who finally hears her body becomes dangerous to everything in the world that has tried to silence her and her body. I was just so impressed by this, I had to share it. I think that we are coming to a point in our collective healing journey, and I'm seeing this a lot with myself and with women clients and friends and just other women that I know. I think we're getting to a point where we're tired of performing. We're also understanding that we're not just simply small men, and that while there might be some really great scientific research out there, we need to give ourselves permission to rethink how we apply it to ourselves as women, understanding that we have different unique needs because we are different biologically. We have different hormones, right? We're wired differently. We learn differently. We process trauma differently. And that's not a weakness, that's a strength. And no man, and this is not a diss on men, I love men, but just collectively, no man gets to stand there and tell us that we are wrong when we have our women's intuition telling us, that doesn't really apply to me, or my experience is a little different. Myself, and I think about every woman I know at one point got shut down by even a well-meaning man at some point for just listening to her own body and her own intuition. And I'm not trying to discredit any of that, but what I'm saying is your instincts are never wrong. You have women's intuition for a reason. You have instincts for a reason. One of the best things you can do is rebuild that trust and that relationship with your own body from inside. Not what it looks like on the outside, not is what anyone else is going to think, not is my weight perfect, do I need to shrink myself anymore, let me not be threatening because, in order to ensure safety, I need to play small. I know so many of us have gone through that. And this is about recognizing that and having that awareness so that we can start healing and changing that pattern for ourselves, for our daughters, and for generations of women to come.